Courtney, can you do the roll call?
Sure. Lee. Sabula.
Yep.
Lyra. Johnson. Hayes.
Present.
Egal. Hesse. Wenzel Berger. Yang.
Present.
Pischler.
Present.
Benayeg.
Present.
Okay, we have a quorum of 5. However, unfortunately, our chair and vice chair were not able to make it tonight. So I do need a motion to have someone else chair the meeting.
I'll move for Alex to chair.
I second the motion.
All in favor? Aye.
All in
Aye.
favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, thank you for stepping up, Alex. We do appreciate it.
No problem. I'll do my best.
Oh.
So we, what's that?
The land
Oh,
acknowledgement.
wait, I thought we already, you're just picking someone to, all right, can we, start with, land, or do I do that, or pass? The land acknowledgement?
We are gathered here on the lands that were originally home to the Menominee and Ho-Chunk nations. We honor the Menominee and Ho-Chunk communities and are grateful for their stewardship of the land and waters. We acknowledge these ancestral grounds as sacred and remember that the complex history of settler colonialism on these lands and the effects that persist today. We commit to a restorative and healing relationship of the original inhabitants and our community.
Thank you. Now we have our, mission statement.
The mission of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee is to create a more welcoming, connected, and equitable Oshkosh by consciously including the richness and complexities of marginalized voices in its planning and function.
Thank you. So now we'll move on to approve the minutes from the November 22nd meeting.
28th, but that's okay.
I'm sorry. So then do I basically go down
No,
or,
we just need a motion.
I'll move to approve the November 28th minutes.
Second.
third?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Sorry, I'm new to this.
Yep.
You're doing a fantastic job, though.
Much appreciated. All right, so now we'll move on to the citizen statements to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Do we have anybody speaking today? I wasn't
We
sure if,
do have someone registered today. Go ahead, Gregory.
Okay, Gregory Egner, 911 Greenwood Court. I was at the last meeting and I was excited to hear about October 8th. I guess there's a festival planned for that day, and I was just wondering, is there any type of winter festival? Because that'd be something that, the committee could think about in the future. Do something in the winter, such as go out to Westward Ho, roller skating, or whatever fun activities there are in the winter for everybody.
Sure.
For all, so just kind of something to think about if get a winter festival going. Obviously, this year it's kind of late to do that, but something for next winter to do. Then
Oh, yeah.
if you strike a weekend where probably, I'm thinking the week between the conference championships and the Super Bowl when there's no football, that would probably be the best weekend
Sure,
at the end of January.
Avoid both big sporting events for sure.
Yeah, that's true, and that's why, because the Super Bowl day is an event day, so a lot of things happen right at 7 o'clock in the morning already and go all the way to the end of the game, so that's why, I was thinking, the week between that, you have a winter fest and have all sorts of fun winter activities for people to do, so that's...
Sure. And they do like the indoor farmers markets and stuff like that. I don't know. There's always, maybe that venue would be an option for something like that if we were to. I guess I know we're still kind of in the early stages of the whole the Harvest Festival thing like that, and we talked about indoor versus outdoor, but I don't know.
Yep. And generally, we would encourage community members and groups to work together to put together that type of an event. As I think we are feeling with the Harvest Moon festival, that it takes a lot of different people and a lot of time commitment to put those together. So certainly appreciate the recommendation, and definitely encourage members of the community to look for opportunities to hold events. And if they are looking for a venue or somewhere where the city can assist, definitely have them reach out to us here at the city regarding, any event that they might want to plan. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Oh, Michelle, I got, I don't know if you know Dr. Eric Smutnik. He has a skate club, and I've seen in the past winters he has done some partnerships with the school district, UW Oshkosh. So normally he's been doing it, I think, just right here by the Y. They normally put some ice ring there and do the skating. And I've also seen him do partnership with neighborhood associations on the lake. Families come in, their kids, come in dressed up in their gear and do such kind of events. And I think maybe it's one of those things that the city could partner with him to,
That'd be a good idea as
ice
well.
skating, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anything else you'd, anything
No,
else you'd
that
like
was
to bring before?
basically what I wanted to talk about, because I remember everybody talking about the Harvest Fest, and I thought, wait, maybe something in the winter would be good too.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
From there, we'll move on to public comment on agenda items.
No one is registered, thank you.
From now we'll move on to discuss Toward One conference.
So I will spearhead this a little bit because Angie requested that we put this on the agenda. The Toward One conference is a conference that's being held in April. It is really focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it's being held in Appleton this year. I know that Angie was interested in participating potentially in that. Obviously, there's a cost to participate in the Toward One conference. In past years, Courtney and I have gone on behalf of the city to look for new ideas and, hear the people who are speaking, look for best practices, etc. So I know she wanted to talk a little bit more about that. Ashley also mentioned to me he thought that would be something that would be good for staff, for all sorts of people, committee members, etc. So other than that, I don't have a lot to say, other than if anyone wants to give any thoughts on it. We may want to revisit this again when Angie, who again requested it be on the meeting, is available.
Looks like there's a little bit of information, about it online already with regard to speakers, potential sessions, things like that. If anyone wanted to take a look at that.
Right, absolutely. And I do intend to attend again this year. And I know actually my HR generalist Courtney is on one of the planning committees. So if people do have any questions or anything, it was a great conference last time I went. It doesn't just focus on one segment either. There were segments that focused on community, segments that focused on school districts, segments that focused more for private sector as well. Courtney, I don't know if you have any other insights.
There's 4 tracks.
Four
so
tracks.
Different 4 tracks that you could go down with, but the community one, again, is community focused, and we want more about the organization track with private and public.
So it's a conference that's really applicable to pretty much anyone, any organization, that can get value from it. When Courtney and I went, it was down in Madison, but we're kind of happy to see it's right in our neighborhood in Appleton this year, so.
Do we know what the costs are to attend?
It's $150 per person, I believe. Well, I shouldn't say that.
$100 if you register before a March date, and then $150 after that. And that's for the
For government workers. So I believe there may be multiple cost structures.
Yes,
Is it a full day or is it a 2-day event?
it's a 2-day event.
Days,
Yep.
Okay.
All right. From there, we'll move on to plan facilitation and development, where we'll discuss the draft plan document.
I do know that Angie was working on some edits from our last meeting. Per our conversation, I did add in the ordinance, as we discussed. So, I know my initial email said, look at the highlighted areas, and the problem with that was just that I didn't give good instruction to Adrian and said, just make sure you send what I sent to them previously. But we can discuss any part of it today. We're not limited to the highlighted areas.
I'm not sure how we want to go about this.
Right, well, we can
remember
start
how
from
far
the
we-
beginning, or, I know we really got into a lot of conversation about the goals last time. That seemed to be where there was a little bit of, debate, we'll call it.
Wasn't there a bit of a conversation about that plan lens section too?
Yep, that's
I know it's-
correct.
Yeah, that's-
And I see, it looks like Angie also took some time to add some more key terms, even though we kind of discussed that it'll really be hard to do all of the key terms until we've finished the entire plan, to make sure we have all of the terms defined. So in Plan Lens, I don't know if we want to talk a little bit about that. It looks like Angie added some information from the GDEIB where it says organizations agree that the ultimate goal is to help create a world that is better for everyone. The goal may be stated in different words and with different points of emphasis. However, a consensus exists on long-term purpose, contribute to the greater good of society, create a world that is fair, just, respectable, and equitable, eliminate injustice and oppression, and of course, it continues on. You can all, but I think after our last meeting, she kind of went that direction for the Plan Lens. So I don't know if anybody's got any thoughts on that.
I'm not sure on that piece.
We'll give everybody a minute to digest. Anyone have any thoughts or some other things that we think should be included in the plan lens that we want to talk about?
I think those are some good points, just a matter of crafting the statements or. In a way that's digestible, 'cause I know at one point there was talk about removing this section entirely.
Right.
I guess I don't really know what that looks like. I've never personally tried to write any of these, write any plans like this. Well, one of the members that had the most to say about it was here, unfortunately.
I know, and I think Angie and Ashley were both quite invested in the verbiage, and then, of course, they were not able to be here tonight.
I don't know. Maybe it'd make more. Or, I don't know. Maybe might be something better to revisit later on. I don't know if maybe go on to like the big goal piece. I guess when I think about it, that was ultimately what we ended up spending a good bit of time about there at the end, which was some of the big fundamental questions that I was honestly kind of wondering about myself. Some of the points that Lakeisha had brought up about like what exactly is our role, or again, I know we were kind of framed around the Harvest Festival, things like that. Like, what is our role? Is our goal to, I guess, be the ones that like plan and set everything up, for? Or I guess I remember the exact pieces. Again, I was kind of trying to absorb as much as I could, being my first meeting, but and really looking at what our purpose and function will be with regard to projects such as that, or again, moving forward. Again, I feel like I might have minimal to contribute at this point, but I don't know. I felt like that was kind of one of the big pieces that we were kind of stuck on there in the end. I know we spent a good bit of time there on the lens and whether it should be there and how it should read, but again, the more I think about it now, I think getting back to those goals might make a little more sense again, and just in helping us frame some of those other pieces too. Again, like you were saying, help us come up to with the other terms and things like that. We might need to define really understanding and establishing what the function of this group is, and how we're going to support these projects or these ideas that we have, and what exactly. Again, I remember Lakeisha talking about like, is it our goal to be like educating like members of like staff, or like because we can't really enforce anything, but we can create we can do seminars, we can create pamphlets, we can create things like that. As far as enforcing those things go, it's again, as far as power goes, it's this board is just advisory from my understanding. So yeah, I guess I'm not exactly sure, and I'm not exactly sure where to guide this conversation from. I guess from here, but I don't know. I guess that's kind of that was one thing that had really stuck out, at least to me, when we were trying to go over this piece, that I kind of was trying to wrap my head around a little bit. So I guess I don't know who. I'm just talking until
until somebody else starts to talk. Well, we certainly can talk about the goals a little bit, if that makes sense. And I think the question of scope is definitely one that we have struggled with. In the end, this plan will go to council, and they will recommend certain things based on that plan. So we have talked about, again, what's in the charge and what's not in the charge, and I know there's been a lot of discussion whether what the goals are in or out of the charge. Some members indicated that they should put it in anyway. So I guess that's really where you guys are going to have to come to some consensus as to what do you want to put in front of the council. you know, regarding the goals of this committee and the resources that you need to reach those goals.
This might be a
So
very
just, oh, sorry.
This might be a very basic question, but again, just kind of being new to this whole process. Like, so what exactly is this? Like, what's the purpose of this document that we're creating? I mean, like this group was already, it was already created, and we have the things like that. Like, what's the purpose of this document in particular? Like, what are we trying to? I guess that was one thing. I guess just in
Right.
general, I wasn't. I mean, I'm just trying. I guess I was trying to look at it from big picture, like as to figure out what the group is for, but just specifically, like what is this document for? What are we trying to do with this?
I think that was where there was some debate our last meeting is this plan, our strategic plan that will be placed in writing, supposed to be our goals and our metrics when determining if we've been able to obtain those goals, or is it our vision for the city? I took the position simply based on the ordinance and the, I guess, kind of the ordinance, and use that as a guidance for the purpose of the plan. And it is how we are to, my position was that we are able to gauge how successful we are being, not how successful the city has been in taking our advice. And so I thought this was supposed to be our plan and how we will implement or effectuate these goals. Like our goals, yes, it could be to, advise the city about a variety of, community-based events. But I did not think that the metrics are whether the city has done them or not. And that's just the initial. I thought this would be an initial strategic plan for this committee, and how we see ourselves acting in our advisory position. And then, of course, knowing that this could be that living, breathing document that over time it changes, so that we are still, as goals are obtained, that we are setting new goals. And so at a very start, my position was that this should be, what do we see us doing in collaboration with the city and city council? And how do we see us, what are the steps that we need to take to do that? I think that the alternative to that was that I think at one point it was kind of the idea that, like, how are we holding the city accountable? Is this more a plan for us, and if the city is not amenable to our advice and guidance and input, then what is the purpose of the advisory committee? So I think that was kind of where we were at the last meeting, that really kind of stalled, not necessarily stalled, but I think that it was the realization that we weren't all on the same page as to how are we supposed to set this plan into action. First, like, how are we even supposed to draft a plan? What is our plan? What is our role, and what are the indicators that we're using? Is it based on cities' progress or cities' actions or our actions? And so I think that before we can even establish these goals and these indicators, what should this plan be made up of, is the question that I had. Of course, we want to be able to have a valuable say in how the city does certain things. I think that that's putting the cart before the horse. I think we have to establish our plan, and then our goals within that could be really laying the groundwork for the city to accomplish the things that we have for our vision. And if we don't have that for what we're going to do and how we're going to convince the city that certain changes need to be made, I think this will fail. And that's just my opinion. We need to figure out what we are going to do, how we're going to do it, and the best way to get the city on board with some of the amazing ideas and planning and things that we have. And it's not necessarily the interworkings of the city as the government agency that it is right now. We're advisory to city council. And I think we needed to separate that. I don't know how anyone else feels, but please feel free to share.
I think that was very helpful. That was definitely jogged the memory a little bit more. I feel like I was kind of only touching the surface. Because yeah, no, that's definitely a very important distinction as well. Like I would agree that before we're coming up with these goals, what are these goals going to be directed towards? Again, are these goals for us, or are they goals for the city, and then can we encapsulate some of those things we want to within the goal? If we create goals for ourselves, can those be elements of that as well?
Right.
But
Yeah, and I think for recruiting efforts and things like that, that's one of the goals that has been laid out in the draft plan. But I don't believe we have the power as an advisory committee to effectuate that. It would be maybe
excuse me.
I don't know.
Thinking like when you're talking about recruitment efforts, I think as our role is to advise, put that in a document in here, right? So I think it's for the city council to recommend to the city manager, or it's for the city manager to recommend to the council in terms of making those efforts of recruitment. I don't know how it goes, but I think from this standpoint, I think it's us to put it in here, right? And then once we hand it to the city council, I think the city council employs the city manager, right? And that's when now the city manager could do those efforts of recruitment. I think that's how it goes, I think. Am I wrong, Michelle, on that?
You are correct that the council gives the city manager his goals every year. They do direct his activities. And of course, he directs the rest of the organization. So, we, again, also have an internal committee that is working on a lot of our internal policies and procedures. That's made up of employees when it comes to the employee side of the equation. I think the intent was for this committee to be more focused on what we can do to improve the community involvement, understanding, input, things to that effect. And of course, the department heads recently put together all of their metrics for how they're going to begin, at least, again, working document, measuring their own efforts to make sure that we are being fair in our allocations of our resources, that we are, doing our internal processes correctly. I think that, the charge really, they definitely want you guys to be that bridge to the community, to be able to help the city understand where we need to do a better job serving the community. That's my understanding of the intent of the committee, is so that, if we are missing out on how we're serving the community, the programs that we're putting out there. That was one of the reasons we had Community Development Director, Kelly Nyforth here a couple of months ago. And so, again, we need to know how we better serve the community. That's, I think, in my opinion, where we really need help, because we don't have the interactions. We do. I shouldn't say we don't have the interactions, but you guys come from I guess, an environment or a place where you probably hear things that they're not telling the city directly, that they may not know to tell the city, they may not know to ask the city. And that's where I think we'd really love the guidance from this committee. I know one of the duties relates to ordinances with housing, health, etc. And I know we talked a little bit about, are we offering the right programs to people? That is definitely something I know that Community Development Director Nyforth, wants to better understand and make sure we're offering the right programs. I think that's an area where she would encourage further input and help from the community. I'm trying to think of other, I mean, it could be as simple as, are we offering the right street support? Are we making sure we're fair in where we're allocating our resources throughout the city, which I know is one of our measurements regarding streets? Like, are we making sure streets are being prioritized on need and not in more affluent parts of the city, that everybody is being treated fairly, and we're allocating resources even, through our public service department equitably, which is again why they actually chose a measurement with basically the our street repairs, to make sure that we're, again, being fair and we are repairing the areas that need it the most, that there's, good water, wastewater, filtration, all of that throughout the city. So those are some of the things, obviously, that our water and streets people focus on, is that are we giving the right amount of attention to people equitably across the city. And I know it's probably not something most people think about, but it is really an important part of the resources we provide to the city. So I mean, I don't know, it's not my plan, it's your plan. Obviously, I have gained a lot of insights from this committee over the last couple of years that we have implemented. So when I do hear good ideas from this committee, if they affect HR, we make them happen. But I don't know if that's the main focus, is really to help us understand how we are serving the community.
If we are if we are technically an advisory committee, and again, I just kind of, and just to try to help me wrap my head around it, I keep going back just to the basic plan, the plan mission, again, providing a framework for the city of Oshkosh. I mean, and again, if it is just advisory, I mean, is that really, isn't it just, would it just be as simple as that? Creating really delving into those, big areas, like you talked about, like housing, community involvement, education, things like that. And really delving into what those best current practices are, and again, I don't know what our products would look like, or what that would look like when it comes to, sharing them and making sure those ideas are expressed, or those ideas are shared in the research, and all the new information is shared amongst, city hall or city council members, things like that. again, like if that's, but then again, if that's our role, if we go back to like the whole like harvest festival thing, where do we fit into like where do we fit into a piece like that, which is again which kind of makes me wonder again, is again like where we again just like or again unless that falls under one of those pieces, and again I guess that kind of jumps into what like into the guiding goals and things like that, but
And I think the intent is that this committee be active in things that are going on in our community. I mean, technically, the plan that the committee is supposed to implement is the committee will implement a public education plan and actively plan, sponsor, and participate in events that promote and celebrate diversity. That's the plan that the committee is supposed to develop, according to number 3 of the duties.
So Michelle, I know that we've been working on this document for quite some time now, and it just seems like we never reach the end.
Right.
Now, this will eventually, you mentioned earlier, go to council. Now, is that supposed to be for their approval of this document before we can take any actions on it?
They have been very supportive of us getting involved in the community, but they are kind of looking for your overall plan, again, on how you're going to affect the community and what resources you think we need to accomplish that. So I think they understand that you can't do everything. There are some things that as a committee you might be able to do, and there are other things as a committee you recommend we do, but these are the resources that we're gonna need to do that. And that's kind of, I think, what they're looking for. Like, what are you guys gonna do, and what else do you recommend we do, and what other resources are we gonna need to make that happen? I feel it's as simple as that, but again, it's not my plan. Ultimately, it's your plan.
I think for me, where I've had a problem even with this is, let's say suppose we complete it and we hand it over to council. Council have a choice either to take it up or to put it aside. The truth is there's no one to advocate more at a higher level. We are just an advisor, right? So, for example, we are close to the community. We see the community every day. And the community is not there in those budget hearings. You understand what I'm saying here? I'll give an example of the just ended budget hearing where you had a leader representing one department, for example, the police chief, standing in front of the city council and asking for funding for a specific thing. That is more powerful in getting the resource, in my view. But the community itself, I don't think they have an advocate out there. We can advise the city council, like, okay, the community needs this, but as long as there's no specific person standing in front of the city council on those budget hearings to ask for a specific amount of resources, I see that there's that disconnect.
So is that one of the goals that we have, is to have an advocate for each of those areas that is able to present and advocate for those members in the community that are,
Yes, my
that
understanding
there's
is
disparate treatment or application of things?
Yeah.
Is that one of our goals, to be able to have that advocate?
Yeah, my understanding in the beginning was we needed to have that specific person up front, but I think council went this route where we need to do this first, and then we could have that person.
Right.
But as it is right now, we don't have that person to advocate. We have nobody. So we have us as a community just to, to recommend. So that's where I always struggle. It's hard for me. I don't know me, but I feel like we can advise. City council has a choice to take our advice or not. And when the most critical time is during those budget hearings, because that's where the money is discussed. And if the community doesn't have anybody representing them for their needs in those discussions, there's not going to be any money allocated to that. A perfect example is just what Michelle just spoke about here, like how the money is allocated in the city, like for roads, for sewer, for anything. You could see inequities also in the city where the money is always directed, where there is proper advocates, the so-called the wealth part of the town, they always get the bigger share of, because they have somebody who could talk to the powers. The other parts of the city, or the poor parts of the city where there's nobody to advocate for them in those budget hearings, they'll get their turn, but it's gonna be sometime later, you know. So somebody's always needed to speak for the community. And which community are we talking about? If we're talking about the communities that are doing fine, they always have the voices. And the communities that are not doing fine, they have no voice. This is my take. That's how I look at it. Yeah.
Agree.
So are we proposing to kind of implement like a plan, like Lakeisha was saying, to try to recruit these kinds of people? And how would we do that? Like, I know we have a community building and education part, but what exactly, how are we gonna do that? How are we gonna do that? Like, build a community? Because it does say that we're gonna be like educating people in the community and try to get people to understand DEI more. But in what ways are we gonna go about that other than our one event that's gonna be happening in October?
And I guess the question would be, what do you recommend? And if you have 6 recommendations, for example, what resources would you need to make each of them or all of them happen? And that's where I think that the council can say, these are all great ideas and these are the resources that it would take to do them. And maybe they say, well, we can't do all 6 of those. Maybe we want to do 3, and we're going to either assign staff or outsource or, you know, whatever it is to make those things happen. You know, one of the things that we've talked about is, you know, should there be a listening session? Should there, and these are the types of things where we want to know what you guys want to do. Some of it was, you know what, we're just going to go out and we're just going to talk to people and then we're going to bring that feedback back. And I don't know if that ever really got any feet under it.
And that's one piece, I guess, when I think about, or at least getting started, is like, you know, doing some kind of like needs inventory within the community. Or again, they're not just, I guess, obviously not just one community within the city, but, you know, community or, you know, citywide, and really really trying to narrow down those areas like where we're seeing most of the inequality and most, you know, like the most glaring issues related to DEI, maybe as a kind of at least as a jumping off point, at least where to start and focus some of our efforts and where to. I guess I don't know. I guess it's just kind of one thing I think about when when we kind of look at that from the community, you know, at least the community perspective, and maybe with some of those town halls and things like that we've talked about there, maybe that's a way to maybe start to kind of like look for you know, potential other community members that, you know, might be able to, you know, be those community advocates. Again, that we need like someone within the community that can actually that can actually speak to maybe towards some more of those budget matters, things along those lines. I don't know. Again, I guess kind of like, just kind of the more we talk, and the way I kind of see some of the pieces going is like, you know, that would be one pillar kind of what we're doing, you know, is reaching out to the community, whether it's through needs inventories, surveys, things along those lines, and then kind of using that to guide our efforts as to where, you know, where we're focusing, where we're putting most of our research into, you know, best current practices, you know, other resources, things like that we can provide related to those most commonly needed items. Or pieces or whatever. Again, I mean, not to say that, you know, we couldn't focus on multiple, but, you know, at least kind of give us an idea of like, you know, where those big ones are and which ones need more, you know, more time, more resources, more manpower to kind of, you know, to kind of put towards that. And then also kind of that piece too, again, kind of going back to like that framework, what it could, like what that, and it just, and I feel like that could almost again be more on like the, again, like the, I'm sorry, kind of getting ahead of myself, kind of thinking as I'm talking. But so yeah, kind of that one piece there where we're getting community feedback again through those inventories, focusing our efforts on that, and then also having that other piece where we're advising the city hall or members of city hall and the city council as to best practices related again to some of these areas that are coming up as important or big big glaring issues for the citizens of the community. And then again, yeah, and with part of our goals being at educating the community and things like that. Again, it could be through those through those town halls, and again through these harvest, through these different festival events. Again, regardless of, I know we haven't really decided what our function within that within the planning for that would be yet, but I mean, I guess that's kind of just, I guess at least how I'm kind of envisioning things. So I guess I don't know if anybody else has any other thoughts.
I like the needs inventory because I think that's what is necessary in order for us to advise. As a committee of only so many people, in hopes of advising city council about our community, we need to know what our community needs. And I think that sometimes it's best to break those subject areas down into those that we know exist and get feedback on that. So housing and barriers to housing and barriers to affordable housing, barriers to housing when you have evictions or criminal convictions, because that is, that really does affect marginalized communities in a way that others are not affected. And so it's like, how are we, and that was one of the questions that we brought up with Kelly Nyforth, that there's a lot of development going on, and that development and the, I guess, tax credit or city benefits given to the developers, is there a way to kind of implement something that would allow for,
Incentivize maybe, is
Yes.
what you're saying?
Yes, to do that. Or, some of the other counties or cities have a rent program where if you've had an eviction, you go through this rent program where there's a number of landlords that are willing to rent to those who've had an eviction, but they have this certificate of completion. So like eliminating those. So finding out what we need. And so like that information gathering stage before we can actually act and advise, like we need more emphasis on developments that are going to provide housing that is affordable based on our community, like not based on what we see us being some large, metropolis in 20 years, but like what do we need right now so that our community can actually grow into this vision that we have for 20, 30, 50 years down the road. And so housing. And then you think of transportation, like what is preventing those without reliable transportation, because that affects so much. It affects, your ability to get to work, your ability to get your loved one to a doctor's appointment. So like I was thinking those specific areas, what does our community, what are we lacking? What are we lacking, and how can we address that and advise city council on ways that this city could serve our members? And so I was not thinking this way, but again, I just started like in summer. But I'm just saying that I was thinking more along those lines. Like our community needs this. We have a significant amount of individuals that can't afford housing, and even the housing that they can afford. Even if they could afford housing, they can't get the housing because of certain things. So like we could be addressing that. And that's what I thought, like some of our goals would be housing.
Right.
How do we make it more attainable based on our community needs, not income levels for Madison or cost of living for someone else, but like here based on what it should cost our members to live comfortably and safely. And then safety being another thing as well. We can address safety, we can address health, we can address housing, transportation, employment. We can try to address those things like employers that, incentivize certain things. I think that's what I thought our goals would be focused on. And then the indicators would, like how the steps that we I don't even know if it's really an indicator, but the steps we're going to take to advise city council on how to address our community's needs. That's what I didn't think goal and indicator. I thought, this is our goal, these are the steps necessary, and then the end result would be that we at least have established multiple avenues for our community members to be successful. And not just the one, like, oh, we have, you know, and I'm not poo-pooing on anything that has been worked out, but it's just, yeah, once, you know, the tiny houses are full, then is that it? So once we've filled that, then where are the people that could not get into there? So that's what I envisioned, this strategic plan being. Information get like that, you know, inventory, and then assessments and advisement.
Yes, yeah, I mean, that's kind of, I guess what I kind of thought, what I thought coming in, but I guess I wasn't really sure what.
And I think that kind of, not necessarily, but it does take on kind of an advocacy role when you are, in fact, advising city council based on the information you've obtained from your community. It's not just what we think because we have this great idea and our own personal lived experiences are X. It's no, we've done the inventory and this is what is needed and this is what we would need to determine what we can do and what you can do to provide better, and then start implementing some of them.
Yeah, so I agree, and following off of that, we should circle back to like goal 3, I feel, because I feel like that's what we were like kind of not arguing against, but we had a little bit of debate over it, and I do agree with Akeisha how our plan, we don't want to think about it in terms of us in the future. We want to think about it as of now because we do need to finish this and turn it into city council for them to look over. So I feel as though if we just changed wording for our goal, instead of use, we could say advise and encourage. And some of our indicators would be that the council reflects and is attentive to the DEI framework rather than having them, you know, concretely following what we advise them to do because we are just an advisory board.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, what's everybody else's thoughts?
When I look at this document, I think it's too complicated. Being that we're a new committee in the city of Oshkosh, this is our first time. We had no instruction as to what to do to move forward. So everybody was kind of like in the dark and, you know, trying to figure out what they need to do or what we're expected to do. I think that when I look at this, I think we took a really big bite, more than we can swallow, meaning that even if, assume that council approved this, is this committee able to put it into action? I think we want to be able to say something to council, but be able to take action for what we say. So when I look at this, I think a lot is beyond our capability, being that we're an advisory group here. I want to take small steps. That's who I am. You know, take small steps and then learn and build onto it as you go. You know, we're a new committee, so we can't expect ourselves to be up there and then know everything. We still have to figure out what we need to do here. So I think I feel more comfortable taking, you know, smaller steps and then, you know, learn and then grow from there. You know, obtain information with the community and then work and bridge with the city of Oshkosh on this. And it's gonna take people after us to really, you know, put this committee into work. And, I mean, at least we started something, but it's probably not gonna be us, you know, maybe 5 years down the road, you know, we have people in this committee who would know what to do that we wouldn't know today, but we got something started and get them going.
Yeah.
I want to be able to see us out there doing some events related to the community. You know, earlier when the gentleman proposed on a winter festival, I thought about what if DEI could, you know, be a part of, like, say, the Christmas parade, you know, bring the different people in this community to participate in that. And that's a way to learn about other people. You know, pick some big events in the city of Oshkosh and DI be a part of it. Or we bring in speakers, you know, that conference that we mentioned earlier on the agenda. You know, maybe we could do something related to that just for the city of Oshkosh. You know, for their employees, for their staff. You know, get the government agencies together.
Televised during one of our meetings even.
Yeah, get like the police department, the city, and other government agencies together. That's how we learn. And even the housing people, you know, get all these different people together and educate them. And, you know, people like us would be able to present to them what is the community need of. That's how we learn, that's how we grow. And I think that these are some things that I think that we should be doing, you know, at least to get the ball rolling.
It's like, and yeah, just like starting off with these small steps is how we can, I mean, like,
Right.
and we can start working, like, in doing so, like, we can build our, you know, build that DEI framework through that. And again, once we have an idea of what the community needs are, and if housing is one of the biggest ones, then,
Right.
and we're gonna be dedicating a
Yeah,
lot
and
of
I-
we'll be dedicating a lot of our time and
Yeah, I do
resources.
agree that we need a strategy, we need something like this, but keep it simple, keep it basic, and we can always revise down the road and add more things to it.
And I think it's a really good methodology to pick a couple of things to start with, you know, and say, we want to, maybe the first thing we do want to take on is the barriers to housing, or the transportation barriers, or maybe both, or 3 things, but maybe not 20 things,
Right.
right? I mean, if we're going to go out to the community and ask for input, sometimes you got to focus that a little bit, because otherwise you know what I mean? Like, if you ask them about everything, it's really, really hard to get started. So I liked what you were talking about with barriers to housing. And is there ways that we can understand what the barriers are and then work to look at programming or ordinances or whatever to try to correct some of those? Same thing with transportation. Do we have barriers, or is our problem education or communication about what's out there for people who don't know how to get their mother to an appointment or don't think that they can get to work and what all the options are? So sometimes it's lack of programming, other times it's lack of communication. So, you know, also we, the city does have a surveying tool. I guess the drawback I'm going to say is it's online. And so, again, maybe ideas on how else do we survey, what do we want to survey, and how else do we survey besides online if we want to get good input
response
from the community. So, I mean, so some of it is not just what we should survey, but maybe recommendations on how as well. Because again, we all know there's part of the public,
barriers to even getting a
right,
survey
that will
distributed and
not
answered.
do online surveys. They whether they don't have the access, or they don't have the preference, or the whatever. But again, we do have a surveying tool that is good for online, and also we have access to a lot of surveys that we could select something or make something that might be the questions we need to ask, but then we still need to figure out how do we get those questions to the right people. Especially if it comes to people who are having barriers to housing, they may have other barriers as well, including obviously, internet, Wi-Fi is something that I think a lot of has had a lot of attention, right? That people don't have access to internet necessarily.
And I know that the city may be objected to this, but I really think that to get this idea rolling, to get things going for this community, I really think that we need a DEI coordinator. Without that person to really focus on this, just like any regular staff, I think this committee alone, we will lack the time to do a lot of things that we really want to achieve.
And I think it will help, right? Because we did propose the DEI coordinator this year. It was on a short list of ads. Okay, it was on a kind of long list of ads. It did not get added into the budget for 2023. But sometimes we just need to keep working on getting the right information together. And I think, again, other than just saying we need, what exactly do we need that person to do? These are all the things we think the person would do. This is how they would take up their time. They would work on these things, would be helpful. Sustainability also asked for a person this year. I know they received a lot of conversation for both of those, or if they could split a position. Unfortunately, it was a very tight budget year. And very few positions, obviously, were approved out of the recommended or the requested, we'll call them, positions. So the more, again, we can outline, what do we want to do and what resources we need, I think it's going to become very obvious what we need to make those things happen.
Do you think that the DEI position was not approved because it wasn't outlined sufficiently enough to persuade city council that it is needed?
I never want to assume what other people were thinking. I know there were some council members that didn't want to approve any ads because budget was that tight, so there's that. I know that there were others that would have really liked to have added that position, but then there was also the balance with sustainability, who has their plan completed, and I think they've had their plan completed for some time. So I think that might have been difficult for them to approve a DEI when sustainability has put their plan together. But again, I am not going to assume what other people were thinking when they voted the way they did for the budget. But obviously, the more concrete we can show them what that person would, or that position would do and why it's needed, the stronger case we make for the next budget.
Well, what was the critic on this? Sometimes they say you can listen to what they say, but watch the action. Okay? The position of a DI coordinator has been needed for such a long time, because if we assign everybody to do the job, then there's nobody who's going to do the job. Without a leader, always, everyone is going to say, it's not my responsibility, right? So the last budget, I think the proposal was put on for the position, and yes, the council did not approve it, but they decided to fund some money to, I think, to assist this committee in what we're doing, which is okay. But still, when I look at all these good things me just spoke about right now, yeah, we can do a lot of those ourselves. But we need this committee needed a leader to work with. We really need a leader. All those things that you said, we can do some of them, but without a person in front, it's going to be another 2 years, another 3 years.
Yes, I agree with what you just said. It's just similar to the city of Oshkosh needs the city manager and then the city council members to kind of function, advise, or authorize the city manager we as a committee, I really think that we need a DI coordinator to support. We will give advice to that person, but I think it's that person that will probably do the main job. I really think that if the city of Oshkosh is serious about moving this community forward and make a difference, we need that person.
I would definitely agree, but yeah. Unfortunately, we have to. Unfortunately, when we're faced kind of with the realities of the budget and the decisions that are made, we kind of do have to. I feel like we do have to kind of figure out what we can do with what we have, at least for the time being, until we're able to show that value that we have as a group, and why we might need why it would be advantageous for the city to have someone in a position like that, and to allocate that money every year for someone to coordinate the efforts, whatever efforts that we have. But I 100% agree. It's just, yeah. It's just kind of the whole thing. I think when I come back to just the whole idea, the whole political system, or just in general, when it comes to making any kind of large scale change or things like that, kind of like you say, I think it's starting small or whatever, and we need to I think we need to again kind of hone in on some of those big areas, demonstrate the value we have as a group or whatever, and the advice, the recommendations, whatever it is we can come up with based on the most pressing needs of our community. Again, not what we want the community to be, what our community is and what the needs are, and showing that we can demonstrate the value, and then really trying then from there illustrating what more we could do, or what how much greater of an effect we could have if we actually had someone that was at the city level that could actually push forward greater initiatives than we are as an advisory group.
Yeah, I agree, and I think a way for us to show our value and show that the things that we would need in the future is important is to do some research, and having that in our plan as well is that we're gonna do research. I feel as though if we partnered with, I don't know, the university, I know that there's the Whitburn Center for Governance and Policy Research. They're going to be looking into some stuff about the Go Transit program as well for transportation. So I feel like the university is a really good partner that we could collaborate with.
Most definitely.
So I feel like just adding a goal like that, just general research to understand the city more concretely, especially in quantitative measures, so that people can see the numbers, people can see the actual disparities that we would know because, we're on the DEI committee, but other people wouldn't necessarily understand unless you show them numbers and research.
Exactly, show with data that they're issues, not just say they're issues because we think they're issues, or because we anecdotally know that they're issues.
Right.
Michelle, do you know, is it possible, this DI position, is it possible to get the multiple agencies to fund the position, being that it is
A shared position, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
It has been done in other arenas where positions are shared amongst entities. I don't have a lot of firsthand knowledge of that, but it is something that I have heard of being done, not just for this position, but for other positions.
Right.
Where the city or the county or the school district or whatever can't afford a resource, but could be partially funded amongst a few different entities. That might be something that, the council would consider, at least looking at if other entities wanted to do that as well. So I think that's a very legitimate thought or possible recommendation. For example, I can tell you right now, the city, county, and school district, we have a clinic together. So it certainly, is something that the entities have had agreements to share resources in other arenas. So
this plan. I'm like, I'm sorry. So,
Right.
I agree. I think that it needs to be simplified right now because we have not identified exactly where we're going to place our energy the most because we don't know where it's needed. Besides, we all agree it is most definitely needed. A DI position is needed. Beyond that, we need a plan so that we can get to the point where there's action. And that's what I think we all want is we need to see some action and we need to really be involved the way that we all want to be involved. So I think going general with our plan would be better. And then from there, I don't know, general in that we're doing the needs inventory, and then we do the assessments, identify current resources, identify needed resources, and then action. That's what I think.
How much work is remaining to be done with this plan? Do we know?
It depends on who you ask. No. I think that
I'm asking because I think we are piling ourselves on so much work, and the more we do it, the more we keep on magnifying this document as big. You know, we're not gonna get there. So simplifying it, if it looks good, we stop here, and then we pick up those important, those very specific important issues that we want to address. If it's housing, we start hitting on it and work on it, with or without the coordinator funded. You know, because we shouldn't spend another 3 years, 2 years on a document. We have a crisis out there. The house is burning in town. You know, we can start working on those steps. I'm thinking.
Michelle, I think Angie took this plan from another organization, correct? And then work on it?
She did. She took ideas from all different places, and she put them together, I think, as a starting point for conversation, because let's face it, when you have a blank piece of paper, what happens? You end with a blank piece of paper. So I think she was trying to help us choose some directions by putting it all in there. And I think from it, we've agreed on some direction, but the goals themselves have been, again, just difficult to hone in on, I think. And do we start small, or do we put everything that we might ever want to touch in there? And I think that's where there might not be an agreement with the entire committee on that.
That's also why I kind of hesitate
Right.
to go
You know.
go too far.
Right. And again, you know, I truly believe that if you pick a few things to start with, the council is not going to say, well, that's what you picked, that's what you're stuck with. They're going to say, great, bang out a couple of those, and let's pick some more.
Yeah, especially the fact that we're allowed to revise our plan in our document too. So just hitting down the needs that we need to figure out, you know, because I know that there is a big internet issue too. Like almost a fifth of the entire city doesn't have internet, and so that cuts off a lot of communication and a lot of information that people need in order to make you know, educated decisions, especially with housing and health.
So maybe what would be, okay, so our first step, because I don't know,
No, go ahead.
tend to take over, and I'm trying to step back and not do
I heard a few areas of concern, and I'm not sure we've captured all of them, but I've heard access to internet, barriers to housing, transportation, safety, and then talking about how do we analyze what those needs are, kind of the research and surveying side of that. So I'm sure there are more big issues than the four that I just talked about, access to internet, barriers to housing, transportation, and safety, but those are the ones we talked a little bit about today.
Yeah, I mean, and like you said, like when we do with the information gathering, there has to be some kind of scope. It can't just be every
Right.
we can't just ask everybody about everything.
What I would be happy to do before our next meeting is take at least these four areas back and our surveying organization, Polko, and ask them what types of surveys they have to better understand these four areas. And I'm just gonna start with these four. Just four for now. They probably have 1,000 surveys, but let me see what they have in these four areas and see if there's anything from there that we might want to start with. But then I think we still have to figure out our distribution of those types of surveys besides just the internet. Because of what we just talked about, that the people who may not be getting what they need in these areas probably also don't have access to internet. So, so let me see what we can come up with for possible surveys, and maybe out of that we pick one, just saying, and we figure out how do we want to start with gathering that information from the community. And I'm saying we can do an online survey, but in addition to online, what could we do to make sure we're getting feedback from the right people? Does that make sense? So, I will come back with a few survey options, assuming they have some that would dig into these areas, and maybe we can pick some actions from there. Because I think these are all really great areas, and I think, again, there's 99,000 more areas, but these are all really important, I think, to our community. And if we do the surveys and we find out that one of these areas is just fine, well, maybe that we put that onto the that's not our priority right now list. So I will put that on the next meeting. We will continue plan discussion, but I will bring some ideas on how we can better gather information to, I guess, determine some of our priorities.
Makes sense.
And I really think with this document, the next time when Angie's and the vice chair is there here, I think that we really need to talk about simplify this.
I think we need to talk
Right.
about some of the pieces.
Take out what is
some of-
not
some of the
needed,
things that we spoke
and
about
then,
today.
right, and
I
then.
kind of feel like we said what our goals are
Right,
repeatedly just now.
right.
I kind of feel like we
Yeah.
literally just laid out a strategic
Yeah.
plan,
Right.
and now we're trying to work on that plan by figuring out how we get the information. Well,
Right.
that's part of our plan, so
Right,
that,
right.
Or like
I don't know what, I think we kind of
Done it.
need to identify areas in which historically the community has had the disparity has been felt. Next, we need to do the needs inventory.
I will also
needs
do a little
inventory.
summary.
Like, this is just the plan, like, that is our plan, like, it just sounds like we just laid out our strategic plan, and now we're trying to work on it before we lay it out in writing, but we're doing the steps. If we're gonna figure out how to obtain information from our community, that's part of the steps in attaining our goal. So that is a goal, so if we're gonna identify those, areas that have been, historically, those subject areas that have the disparate treatment, then how do we obtain information from our community? And that is either through polls, through town halls, that's right, that's 2, the needs inventory. 3, assessment. And
Let me take a
obtaining
shot at a summary of that.
4 would be the next one. Like, can that be our, I don't know why we keep doing this over and over,
Yeah.
it's painful.
It's almost
But that
2023
was
now.
we literally just spent this entire time developing our plan and then saying, now let's go act. And it's like, let's put it down here and now let's go act.
Get it on the paper.
Let me put a summary together that might encompass what we've talked about today. And maybe we look at the plan we've been working off of and the summary and decide where we want to go from both. How does that sound?
Makes sense.
I can tell you right now, I'm gonna wanna scrap this. Yeah, I'm sorry. I said it last time, like,
Understandable.
even for an attorney, this is a difficult read. I can read a statute and ordinance all day long in case law. This is not a good. It's not a bad-
Sometimes
it's
when
not-
you look at a document too long, you just don't know what to do with it, and you
Right.
keep going round and round, round and round, and
We
then you
keep
come back to the same point.
Right.
snowballing it until it's
Right.
even
Right.
more confusing. And right now, with it being in its infancy, we need a very general, what are our first steps before we can continue to act and act and act and act and act? And that is, we are in an information gathering stage right now.
Right. So I'm gonna, like I said, I'll write up a very simplistic summary of what I think we discussed today, and then we'll have 2 documents to kind of go back and forth, determine with, the rest of the committee members who weren't able to make it tonight, and see where we want to go. I know there's obviously some desire for simplification, so we'll see where that takes us.
Just in the goals section.
Right.
I think
Okay.
everything else, it sounds great, it sounds good. And then here.
All right. So next, we have roundtable.
Yep, so now we have the committee member roundtable, where we can share activities in the area that related to DEI. Does anyone have anything that they would like to share at this time?
Do we know of anything coming up?
Just, the only one I knew of was the Toward One conference.
Thing?
Yeah, we are going into the winter months, not a lot of activities.
Especially since the semester's over, I feel like a lot of DEI related activities are on campus. So we'd have to wait until like February.
So are you all done for the semester?
Oh yes, I'm so happy. I'm so happy we're done. Finally get a break. But
I remember that.
Congratulations.
thank you.
All right, so anything else to share before we move on? Next thing, so we have outstanding items. We'll start with the update on the Chief Oshkosh statue.
Yep. As I reported last month, we got 2 of the proofs. The proofs have been approved by the Winnebago representatives. We are awaiting the other 3 proofs. The first 2 may be in production, but they will be sending us all 5 plaques at the same time. So we know that they are on break for a couple of weeks for a seasonal shutdown, and that they, I believe, start back up like that second week of January. So we probably won't hear much before our January meeting, but we are awaiting those last 3 proofs. And then obviously, once those 3 proofs are approved, again, they'll be doing production for all 5 and send them to us together. So that's what I have on that one.
The next piece we have is update on community event. I know we haven't really discussed too much
Yeah.
today. We spent most of our time focusing on plan and focus.
Right,
so I don't know if there's anything else.
I did send Angie, some participation lists and things of all the different partners and contact lists of everybody who participated in, the Unity and Community previously. So I'm hoping that she will be able to find some additional partners, because, you know, as I think we discussed, there's no way just this committee can take it on. We really need it to be a community event, and we need other organizations to work on that with us to make that happen. So unfortunately, I haven't talked to Angie since I sent her the list earlier, or later in November or earlier in December, I forgot.
Thank you. And lastly, review future items on the council agenda.
Yep, so council does not have a second December meeting. They chose to only have one meeting in December. So at their December 13th meeting, a couple things that are on their future agenda items is, and there's no date with this, review of beer garden ordinances and processes. So it looks like they're going to be looking at that in the future. And on January 10th, there is a workshop on streetlights, if anybody is interested in that. So those are the upcoming things for the council.
And yes, I'm not familiar with this piece here. Again, is this where where people can propose?
Yep.
Okay, so
Yep.
Does anyone have any future agenda items they'd like to propose at this time? I mean, I know we kind of have our work cut out for us as it sounds. But does anyone have anything else that they'd like to put forward?
The Toward One conference was going to be on the next one as well, because Angie, I think, was going to provide more information, or at least discuss that further.
Yeah, I think she wanted to discuss attending that conference and who should attend and things. So I will put that on the next one, and of course I will put the plan as well as some possible surveys on the next agenda. But any other recommendations? And again, you can always generally email myself and the chair, so that we can obviously look to add that to the agenda.
Like for this, should we try to at least for like coming up with this plan again? I know we keep talking plan, but I mean, is there any way we can attach like some kind of a date to it, or like a goal for completion or whatever? I mean, I know it's difficult to do, especially when we can't get the whole group together at all times, and then asking people to individually edit it and stuff like that at home is kind of difficult. But I mean, is there anything? I mean, I wonder if there's something we can kind of discuss there as far as just means so we can get this piece done or whatever. Like I know we'll talk about again, we're going to talk about simplifying it from what it sounds like next week. But is there any way we can kind of set like at least a goal for ourselves to like have this document, have this document, at least this piece done, so we can actually move on to doing what we'd like to do. I don't know if that makes sense. Like just continue, because I feel like just continuing to have it like hanging out there, and
Right.
I mean, because it feels like we just kind of keep coming back. Oh, you want to edit this section? Oh, I edited this section while we were gone the last month. I edited this. Like, I don't know, just trying to time bound some of it, or I guess I don't know if that's I don't know if anyone has any thoughts. Just so we don't end up spending another year on this, just coming up with the plan piece. And I know it's an important piece, but again, it sounds like, again, from what we talked about, we have a pretty decent idea of what the focus of this group is and kind of what we want to do now. It's just a matter of getting that down on paper, and then let's actually focus on, so we can actually focus on what we need to, what we want this group to accomplish.
I can put goal for completion as a bullet point under plan for next time. How does that sound? This is what I can do.
I know it's going to be loose, but I mean, I don't know, it's just something I think about when there's something that it's been hanging out there for that long.
Right.
And again, and I know it's not.
And this is your second meeting, Alex. No, I'm just kidding. All right, any other future agenda items? Okay. Want to call for a motion to adjourn?
All right, I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
Also move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.